Leviticus 18 contains the Arayot, the foundational biblical prohibitions regarding kinship and sexual relations. On its surface, the chapter presents as a highly repetitive list of family members. The text prohibits relations with a mother, then a father's wife, and later the wife of a father's brother. In classical rabbinic tradition, the text contains no redundant language. Every recurring term is treated as a distinct legal variable. The commentator Rashi synthesizes Talmudic analysis to identify these variables and determine how they dictate specific legal liabilities. This approach treats biological relationships and marriage as distinct categories, applying specific rules to the way the text is interpreted. To follow Rashi's analysis, one must look past the literal list and examine the specific linguistic mechanisms used to organize the law. Verses 7 and 8 present two prohibitions that appear to overlap, one against a mother and another against a father's life. These early manuscript fragments preserve a profound linguistic distinction that serves as the foundation for a highly specific legal inquiry. If a man's mother is also his father's wife, the question arises as to why the text requires two separate verses. Rashi, citing the Talmud in Sanhedrin, explains that verse 8 establishes the prohibition for a stepmother, a woman who is a father's wife, but not the man's biological mother. This Venn diagram shows the intersection. A woman who is both a biological mother and a legal wife carries two distinct layers of prohibition. Verse 7 remains necessary to cover the biological vector, a mother who was never legally married to the father. By splitting these categories, the text ensures biological connection and marital status carry independent legal consequences. Verse 9 continues this pattern, prohibiting a sister, whether born into the household or born outside. Rashi interprets this as a reference to the father's legal standing with the mother, whether their union was a marriage permitted to maintain or one required to dissolve. Verse 11 avoids the word sister, instead using the phrasing daughter of your father's wife. This phrasing is used to introduce a specific legal qualification into the definition of a sibling. This qualification is Kiddushin, the state of legal marriageability between two people. Rashi utilizes verse 11 to specify the severe penalty of excision applies only to a sister born of a woman eligible for Kiddushin with the father. Relations with a sister where Kiddushin cannot exist are governed by different penalties. In this system, the parent's legal union status determines the specific criminal liability for the offspring. Verse 17 addresses relations with a woman and her daughter. Here, the text shifts verbs. Most prohibitions in this chapter use the word uncover, but this verse uses the word take, tikach. In Talmudic terminology, taking refers specifically to the legal establishment of marriage. Uncovering refers to the act of intercourse, including acts of rape. Because the text uses the verb for taking marriage, the prohibition against the daughter only takes effect if the man legally married the mother. If the initial union with the mother was an act of rape, the man is not legally barred from marrying her daughter. This single verb shift establishes a legal boundary where marital structures and acts of violence are governed by different rules. Verse 10 explicitly forbids relations with a granddaughter. Paradoxically, the foundational biblical text never explicitly mentions a direct prohibition against a man's own daughter born out of wedlock. From a logical perspective, the law seems clear. If a granddaughter is forbidden, a man's own daughter must also be forbidden. This is an a fortiori deduction, inferring a greater restriction from a lesser one. However, the rabbis apply the principle of ein mazirin min hadin, the rule that logical deduction alone is insufficient to establish a penal prohibition. While logic suffices for civil matters, the law requires a direct textual source enforcing criminal penalties. With logic excluded, the law must find another way to establish the prohibition for the daughter. The solution is found in a textual analogy, identifying a specific linguistic match between verses. The Hebrew word henna appears in verse 10 regarding the granddaughter, and again in verse 17 regarding a woman and her daughter. This word match is the legal mechanism carrying the prohibition from verse 17 over to verse 10. This clearly demonstrates that for the most severe legal liabilities, rabbinic jurisprudence requires a direct textual anchor rather than human reasoning. Examining the full scope of Leviticus 18 reveals how the text is organized. This schematic grid maps the intersections between biological ties and the requirements of Kiddushin. Rashi identifies specific nouns and verb choices as the foundational elements that define the law. His analysis treats familial relationships not just as physical facts, but as legal categories defined by the text. The consistency of this system depends entirely on the precision of the textual structure. Through Rashi's lens, these verses function as a rigorous legal system governed by a specific internal logic.